one to you, but now we'll go back on track with really what is the important question, is what projects to do. And usually there's more projects than there is capital to afford. And interestingly, I've got a very funny video called The Expert. Some of you have probably seen this before. You can look how many views it has. I mean, that's in line with Beyonce, 22 million views. So it's had an awful lot of views because it shows in a very comical fashion one of the problems about trying to satisfy stakeholders. So if you want the simple answer of what is project success is satisfied stakeholders. Yeah? Now, you've got a huge number of criteria you can use, such as the business case and financial metrics and strategic alignment. These are all very good criteria you can use to help make the project selection process objective. We want it objective and not subjective. Now, interestingly, the ad even for this funny video is very relevant. I was going to talk about it, and fortuitously, there's a little ad here. Some of you may not be aware, but in some 3 weeks' time, I think it's 3 weeks' time, we have a state government election. And the two main contenders are our current Premier, leader of the Liberal and National Party coalition, but she's a Liberal Party leader, and Gladys Berejiklian. Gladys always found it amazing that she's the Premier because she's a woman and she has a surname that nobody can pronounce. Berejiklian. She's the daughter of Lebanese migrants. And in fact, Gladys became very successful as the New South Wales Transport Minister. And we're undergoing quite a transport revolution. Soon we're going to see the Northwest Metro Link opened, and that's why currently the train station here is broken, because they have to refit it for single carriage, autonomous, unmanned trains in peak hour every 4 minutes. And that Metrolink is going to open soon. And we've got WestConnex, a motorway that's opening soon. And so Gladys has been very successful in doing a lot of infrastructure projects, and that's going to be her election pitch, that under the 8 years ago when we had a Labor government for many years, there was a huge amount of corruption. One of the senior ministers, Eddie Obeid, is in prison at the moment for corruption. Ian Macfarlane, another minister, successfully appealed his conviction and was let out of jail because he didn't even benefit from what he was alleged, his alleged corrupt behaviour. So that makes a bit of sense, but he was also a Labor minister. So some of them have been jailed, in fact. So now Michael Daly is the Labor leader of the Labor Party, but listen to the beginning of his pitch here.
Did someone say KFC?
That's a shame. That's a problem with ads, isn't it? That's a problem with ads. What we'll do, we'll do something here. Oh, it doesn't matter. We put a U in it anyway, I think. Paul Keating, really? I want the ad I just saw. Oh, well, we can go to the 91. New South Wales. No. So the ad I just saw was Michael Daly criticising the New South Wales government for their project proposal with regard to stadiums. So the New South Wales government originally was going to knock down two of our major stadiums, one in Moore Park and one in Olympic Park. They were going to knock them both down because they were both the wrong configuration for contemporary requirements. There was a huge outcry, well, this is very wasteful. It's literally billions of dollars, a couple of $1 billion for each stadium. So now the government is only knocking down the Moore Park one and refurbishing the Olympic Park one. Now Michael Daly in his advertisement said he wasn't, if it was a Labor Party in government, they were not going to do that project. And saying, Michael Daly is saying that the New South Wales government is diverting money away from schools and hospitals to invest in stadiums. So what we see here is the controversy over project selection. New South Wales government thought it was a good idea, but they haven't shown us justified the business case. It's not clear to the electorate, to the voters, as to what's wrong with these stadiums. After using billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to rebuild these stadiums, why will we be better off? What is the business case? So I can't even voice an opinion as to whether even I think, personally, this is a good idea or a bad idea, whether I should support the government or oppose the government with their stadium project, because the business case is obscure. And so they've made a huge blunder that Labor Party is leveraging, and that is, we don't get it. We don't understand why they think it's a priority. It could well be the ROI is excellent. It could be that the direct benefits, the events that are going to be staged in these new stadiums, one rebuilt, one refurbished, is going to directly pay back within a short, say, 5-year period, the cost of the stadium. And then you've got the indirect benefits to the state of the huge injection of tourism. All of the interstate, international visitors who come to see these events, these sporting spectaculars, these spectacular concerts, whatever it is that's planned, well, they have to stay somewhere, they consume a lot of food and beverage, and they potentially inject a lot of money into the economy. So there could well be a very good business case here as to why a big major global city should improve its stadiums, its entertainment venue, major, usually the biggest entertainment venues. But they haven't justified it, they haven't made it simple, it's not clear. I'm sure I could Google and get lots and lots of obscure things on this, but as a voter, why do I need to? Why isn't it clear from what the announcements of the government, and why isn't it obvious? So let's have a look. New South Wales government stadiums, strategy. There we are. Stadium Network, Office of Sport. Funding for 1 was announced, rebuilding the major stadium network program, the biggest investment in sport and event infrastructure. See, will drive growth in the visitor economy, strong cultural and sporting sector, support livability. It would be redeveloped, ANZ would be refurbished, this will allow them world class. Here's a media release here, that the refurbishment's going to save $500 million. That's like when you buy something on sale and you think about all the money you saved. So ladies, if there's a dress that was marked down from $200 to $100, how much money did you save? Yeah, David's got the cynical view, that's right. It's cost you $100. But that's this argument the taxpayers saving money here. Infrastructure, football redevelopment, and then Parramatta, football stadium, etc. So yes, you know, there's lots of stuff here, but it's superficial drivel. More information. Here, cabinet, conventions, you see attachments, guide us to see. There we are, even from the own government site. It's still not clear what was the business case. It's just an announcement that they're going to do it. So we're not. So that's very poor, Gladys. You've slipped up there in terms of not justifying what could well be a good proposal, and Labor sees the crack in the armour. But let's have a look at. I promised you a funny video. Have a look at this funny video, and then we can talk about it. Called The Expert, and this time I want to try and skip the silly ad.
Our company has a new strategic initiative to increase market penetration, maximize brand loyalty, and enhance intangible assets. In pursuit of these objectives, we've started a new project for which we require 7 red lines. I understand your company can help us in this matter.
Of course. Walter here will be the project manager. Walter, we can do this, can't we?
Yes, of course. Anderson here is our expert in all matters related to the drawing of red lines. We've brought him along today to share his professional opinion.
Nice to meet you. Well, you all know me. This is Justine, our company's design specialist.
Hello.
We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular, some with green ink and some with transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid
Let's not rush into any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out. At the end of the day, you are an expert.
the term red line implies the color of the line to be red. To draw a red line with green ink is, well, if it's not exactly impossible, it's pretty close to being impossible.
What does that even mean? Impossible.
I mean, it is possible. There are some people, say, suffering from color blindness, for whom the color of the lines doesn't really make a difference. But I'm quite sure that the target audience of your project doesn't consist solely of such people.
So in principle, this is possible.
I'll simplify. A line as such can be drawn with absolutely any ink, but if you want to get a red line, you need to use red ink.
What if we draw them with blue ink?
It still won't work. If you use blue ink, you'll get blue lines. And what exactly did you mean when you talked about the transparent ink?
How to best explain? I'm sure you know what transparent means.
Yes, I do.
And what a red line means. I hope I don't need to explain to you.
Of course not.
But you need to draw a red line with transparent ink.
Could you describe what you imagine the end result would look like?
Oh, come on, Anderson, what have we got here? Kindergarten?
No, I'm just trying to get...
Let's not waste our time with these unproductive quarrels. The task has been set, the task is plain and clear. Now, if you have any specific questions, then go ahead.
You're the expert here.
All right, let's leave aside the color for the moment. You had something there also relating to perpendicularity.
7 lines, all strictly perpendicular.
To what?
To
Each other.
everything amongst themselves. I assumed you know what perpendicular lines are like.
Of course he does. He's an expert.
2 lines can be perpendicular. All 7 can't be simultaneously perpendicular to each other. I'll show you. This is a line, right?
Yes.
And another, is it perpendicular to the first line?
Well,
Yes, it is perpendicular.
exactly.
Wait, I'm not done. And a third one, is it perpendicular to the first line? Yes, it is. But it doesn't cross the second line. They're both parallel, not perpendicular.
Suppose so.
There it is. 2 lines can be perpendicular.
Can I have the pen? How about this?
Triangle.
This is a triangle. It's definitely not perpendicular lines, and there are 3, not 7.
Why are they blue?
Indeed, I wanted to ask that myself.
I have a blue pen with me. This was just a demonstration.
That's the problem. Your lines are blue. Draw them with red ink.
It won't solve the problem.
Well, how do you know before you've tried? Let's draw them with red ink, then let's see.
I don't have a red pen with me, but I'm completely certain that with red ink, the result will still be the same.
Didn't you tell us earlier that you could only draw red lines with red ink? In fact, yes, I've written that down here. And now you want to draw them with blue ink. Do you want us to call these red lines?
I think I understand. You're not talking about the colour now, right? You're talking about that what do you call it?
Perpendicularity, yes!
That's it. Now you've confused everyone. So what exactly is stopping us from doing this?
Geometry.
Just ignore it.
We have a task. 7 red lines. It's not 20, it's just 7. Anderson, I understand you're a specialist of a narrow field. You don't see the overall picture. But surely it's not a difficult task to draw some 7 lines.
Exactly. Suggest a solution. Any fool can criticize. No offense. But you're an expert. You should know better.
Okay. Let me draw you 2 perfectly perpendicular red lines, and I will draw the rest with transparent ink. They'll be invisible, but I'll draw them.
Would this suit us? Yes, this will suit us. Yes, but at least a couple with green ink. Oh, and I have another question, if I may. Can you draw one of the lines in the form of a kitten?
What?
In the form of a kitten? Market research tells us our users like cute animals. It would be really great if we could...
No.
But why?
Look, I can of course draw you a cat. I'm no artist, but I can give it a try, but it won't be a line anymore, it'll be a cat. A line and a cat, these are 2 different things.
A kitten. Not a cat, but a kitten. They're little, cute, cuddly. Cats, on the other hand,
It won't make a difference.
Anderson, at least hear her out. She hasn't even finished speaking and you're already saying no.
I got the idea, but it's impossible to draw a line in the form of a cat.
What about a bird?
So, where did we stop? What are we doing?
7 red lines, 2 with red ink, 2 with green ink, and the rest with transparent. Did I understand correctly?
Yes.
Excellent. In which case, that's everything, right?
Oh, I almost forgot. We also have a red balloon. Do you know if you could inflate it?
What do I have to do with balloons?
It's red.
Anderson, can you or can you not do this? A simple question.
As such, I can, of course, but...
Excellent. Organise a business trip. We'll cover the expenses, go over to their location, inflate the balloon. Well, this is very productive. Thank you all.
Can I ask you one more question, please? When you inflate the balloon, could you do it in the form of a kitten?
Of course I can. I can do anything. I can do absolutely anything. I'm an expert.
Well, the bad news is the rest of the lecture is not going to be so entertaining. So that is such a popular video because in a very humorous way it shows that sometimes it's quite impossible to keep the stakeholders happy, to satisfy the stakeholders when they want to defy geometry or physics, or they have conflicting requirements, they can't agree amongst themselves. So this is where an agile methodology comes into play, because with an agile methodology you would do a prototype and show from the requirements you've given me so far, this is the sort of system I will build for you. And of course I'll say, no, that's not what we want. And you'd know full well they can't agree amongst themselves, or what they want is technically impossible. But just by prototyping you can show the impossibility. You can then show that essential stakeholders have not signed off on your phase of your process. Therefore, your project cannot continue until they can agree. And you'd know full well they're never going to agree. So then you can move on and do another project, and very little time and energy and money is wasted. The worst thing you can do is this political nonsense, which is agreeing to things that you know are impossible, such that you can bill the client. And we'll talk about the politics later. So Agile enables you to move away from the politics. And we can see sometimes impossible situations. And that's why that's such a popular video, because it is so common, a situation, a circumstance, where the contractor, the provider, is asked to do something not feasible, and they say, we can do anything. Why? Is because they want to take the client's money. Yes, David?
Is that like the light rail?
No, it's not. It's not. So the light rail in the city. So again, this is a challenge project from Gladys, where a transport business case is a pretty easy one to make. And we had trams before, and it's reinstituting the trams. The problem is, when you build trams through the CBD, such a well-established CBD, there's a huge complication of the services underneath. Now you'd think you'd just lay the track above all the services and that's it. Well, what's the problem with that?
Some services don't like having tracks laid on.
That's possible, but services require maintenance. So we're talking about power, talking about water, drainage, sewerage. These things need maintenance. How are you going to maintain a service if there's a railway track sitting above it? You have to close down the railway for quite some time, take off the tracks and dig up the service. So a huge number of services had to be relocated, and I don't think the government had an idea of how many services were involved. And the contractor, Asiano, who took the contract, wrote in the contract that they won't be responsible for moving the services because they're not aware of the number of services and the complexity of the services, nor do they have the authority. It's the Sydney Water Board who has to move the water. It's the whatever the electricity authority is that has to move the electricity. So all series of different authorities who are responsible for these services who would have to move them. So Asiano has succeeded in its litigation of the government, litigating and getting compensation. So no, this is not an impossible project. It's one that was underestimated. And it's, I would put it analogous to the Sydney Opera House. I showed you that too. So what? You know, eventually we will get this light rail. It will move people home. If it works, if it moves people efficiently, if it takes cars off the road, if it reduces congestion, if the users are happy with it, then what the hell? It costs more, it took longer. It probably will be okay. So it was a challenge project because the government, again, didn't use an agile process. They used a classic, see, bureaucracies are allergic to agile because agile has huge unknowns in it. It's an experiment where we investigate and we learn together and we partner together. What bureaucrats want is certainty. So they had a tender process, and based on the tender information, a consortium headed up by Asiano won the tender, and then they successfully sued that the tender was wrong. And so that's a flaw in this engineered process of project management as well. And it caused huge embarrassment to the government because the government wants to meet a deadline because businesses are suffering along the route of the light rail, and it's an eyesore as well. So what Asiano did was extended the schedule, but did a go slow even, and gave a lot of pain to the government, which would have brought them quicker to the negotiation and to paying compensation. So that's a challenge project, but like the Opera House, you know, maybe it'll be okay. It's not an impossible one. Now, what we want from our process is to be able to quickly eliminate impossible projects. And that's why you'll find with DSDM and the feasibility study and with RUP and the inception phase, you'll find this mandatory prototyping phase whereby the major stakeholders have to sign off, have to agree on the understanding of the project. And then you have technical proof of concept that you can technically build it as well. So you have these preliminary projects which address this risk of a lack of feasibility. And poor David Worthington, I'm sure you've looked at your assignment, and he's faced with a really horrible project. And so an initial risk management would change expectations of the project. So I introduced this to you very, very early, because it's key to the course. So this is a more advanced course than what you usually get. Some of you have done, anybody done ISIS 302 and it's rebadged as something else, ITEX 602 or something? Anybody done that? You did, yeah. And so that's Schwalbe, Kathy Schwalbe, and it's Pienbach, and, you know, I'm trying to give you a more advanced course than the standard undergrad course, because this is the postgrad version. So that's why we look at these complications of challenge projects. So, as I promised, what we need to talk about is how do we select projects and how do we measure success. And so firstly, we're going back now to Larson. We're now with Chapter 2. And in Chapter 2, Larson talks about the strategic management process. And project managers should understand something of strategy. And in ITEC 842, we really do learn strategic management, because at the CIO level, you are involved in ITOs, IT opportunities, in championing, supporting, delivering strategic benefit through IT. That's your responsibility as a CIO. How can the business gain a strategic advantage over its competitors? It can be new products, new markets, improved service delivery, and cost reduction. Can all be very strategic in nature. So the project has to align with the organization's mission and strategy. So not understanding the role of projects in a so strategy is implemented through projects. That's how an organization grows and changes. And we can look around this campus and see all the construction being done, all of these very important projects. So if we don't understand what is the strategic direction, we focus on the wrong projects, those that have a low strategic priority. Focusing on the immediate customer, on that squeaky wheel, on that customer who is complaining, but it could be something very esoteric. And it's more important to focus on the majority of customers bringing in the revenue, the whole marketplace and value chain. Overemphasizing technology rather than what is a better strategic fit. And here, this is the same thing. It's the Pareto's law, is that 20% of your customers deliver 80% of your profit. So these are the customers you have to focus on. And we've got the gold plating is another problem too. It has to be good enough for the purpose, but not necessarily perfect, which is not cost effective. So strategic management gives us this theme, this focus, this direction for the firm. It enables us to respond to change, and we'll look at that process in a moment, and then allocating our scarce resources. So the activities of strategic management is, first of all, what is our mission? What are we here to do? I enjoyed Bruce Downton's briefing to the staff, And it was very clear from his briefing at Macquarie University, a strategic objective is to improve our rankings. That global rankings are important to the university. Look how successful the university's been. It puts bums on seats. It helps getting student enrollments, the better your rankings. And what they've got is a strategic group in the administration of the university reverse engineering the rankings. What do we need to do as a university to get our rankings up? And it's essential that there's a code for publications. He insisted that every one of your publications must have this code that goes into this database for rankings. And so buying in and getting the right researchers, doing the right research will boost rankings. Keeping students satisfied is another thing, of course, and there's excellent student support services. But you can see part of the strategy is to maintain and improve the university's rankings. So that's an example of strategy. But that's looking at the mission, the goals, having strategies and then implementing it through projects, doing the right research, having the right support facilities for students. You can see a lot of projects emanating from the strategy of Macquarie University wants to maintain and improve its ratings. It's hard to maintain them because we have a whole series of Chinese universities that are screaming up the rankings, doing very, very well. So relatively, it pushes Australian universities down. So, if we have a look here, we need to review, revise the mission, and this is at the board level of the organisation. And that comes from reviewing the opportunities and threats in the marketplace and assessing our strengths and weaknesses, this SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And distilled from that are new goals and objectives. That gives us a portfolio of strategic choices, and then we have to implement strategy, and we look for projects that align with strategy, and then we finance and instigate projects. No. So agile is when we're here. You're the project manager, you've been given the project. One thing you want to ask and understand is, what's the business case for the project? How did it get here? How did it get distilled? How was it nominated? How did we get this project? So you have an understanding. And then Agile requires you to test whether the project can deliver on its objectives, whether it's reasonable. That's why the expert, he was briefed on his project. Is it reasonable? Can he deliver? Well, if he does the lines transparent, maybe.
Question. So basically this strategic management process, based from what I learned before, is specific for an organization.
Yes.
So for example, from an organizational point of view, I want my company to be the number 2, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that will be the overall company strategic
Yes,
management.
yes.
And then as a CIO, I should also form my own strategic management in support of that goal. Right?
Of course.
So it's the same process.
So quite often an organization is challenged by low-cost competitors, and the strategy is to reduce cost. So as the CIO, you move a lot of infrastructure to the cloud and reduce your staff. Therefore, your cloud project is aligning with the overall strategy as long as it reduces cost. But if it increases cost, you have to say, no, boss, no. Talk to the CEO, the CFO, no. We've looked at the feasibility of this project, and in fact, it's lower cost for us to continue to manage our own operations when we look at the total cost of ownership, the TCO.
Is that just cost, or is it risk as well?
Well, basically, there's always risk too in a project that you do, but assuming that cost is your strategy. Yeah, that's your strategy, reduce cost. So if you know that's a strategy, you can propose maybe a migration to cloud, but you have to validate it will in fact reduce cost, and maybe it doesn't. So then you don't proceed because the project's just not aligning here with the new goals and objectives. But if the move to cloud is to give more agility in terms of more flexibility, more usability, more functionality, quicker provisioning, more satisfied users, and you have a budget and the project can be done within budget, then it may well be a very good project. So what this is saying is you have to understand the goals, why the organization is doing this, and you need to continuously validate. That's your risk management, in fact, is validating that the project can deliver on its goals. And if it can't, then the best thing you can do is conserve the organization's capital and not proceed with the project. The Larson is very right in saying that the project manager shouldn't be focused on using cool new technology and having fun in terms of building something that supposedly the organization thinks they need, but the project manager should be focused on delivering on the expectations of the sponsor. So you have to understand what those expectations are. So we have this defining the mission, setting the goals, analyzing the strategies, and implementing the projects. It's the same as this, really. So the mission statement. It starts at the mission to understand what are the real goals of the organization, to communicate the purpose to all the stakeholders, to understand the scope of the organization, the focus for decision making and evaluating performance. So I found this on Macquarie University, its mission, its vision. Macquarie University is ecologically sound, socially just, and economically viable in all of its activities. And I didn't find that at all motivating. I didn't find it at all interesting. I didn't find it a good guidance at all. If I was to be a little bit cynical, God forbid, ecologically sound. Really? I mean, we're not a carbon dioxide belching coal-fired power station now, are we? So ecological soundness is not really a big priority or focus.
Those earth-friendly toilet cleaners that don't actually clean your toilet and stuff like that.
Well, potentially, you see, it's not going to change the world ecologically, whatever we do, right? And if you think about it, bringing 120, 130 people into this lecture theatre is not ecologically sound. Charles Sturt University has the majority of its students online. Distance education. That's more ecologically sound, if you ask me, because you produce the learning object once and replicate it in an infinite number, saving energy. So we have this chalk and talk because it's always worked for the university and continues to work for the university, and it's got something to do with meeting visa requirements, I suspect, with overseas students. And there's this nexus here that, this is the way we've always done things. But the university is not particularly ecologically sound, and nor
You can't say that to the art students.
Yeah, and that's why on our rubbish bins it says these will be recycled. And you've got people who empty the rubbish bins and then pull out the recyclables, and they all end up in landfill anyway nowadays because China doesn't want them anymore. But there's a feel good around that your drink container. They shouldn't sell bottled water. That would be a good idea because in the whole campus, because you should fill up your bottles. They should sell empty bottles to go and fill up, but they don't do that because the food vendors will get upset. They make a lot of money in selling bottled water. Ecologically sound doesn't seem particularly relevant. We shouldn't be unsound, but it's not a focus for us. Socially just. Do we expect this university to be socially unjust? Do you expect me to be unfair? To randomly assign marks to students? You know? So I know, and that would be socially unjust. But those sort of people don't last very long in the university because students have a tendency to complain, rightly so. So, you know, like any organisation, especially one dealing with students, we should be just, and it's not. It should be a requirement, not a part of our mission. It's not expected that we would be unjust and economically viable in all of our activities. That's not true. We have a hospital, a private hospital, that's losing millions of dollars. That's not economically viable, but...
That's why they sell the bottled water.
Yeah, maybe. No, that's why there's so many bums on these seats. It pays for the hospital. So we don't expect gross financial mismanagement, do we? But we know some activities are not viable. But then there's that 30 students. Yeah, I see where that's coming from. Pay for the hospital. Yeah, I know. So to me, it was meaningless.
Yeah, it's very general.
It's meaningless, drivel. And what we find with organisations is they have PR companies that write their mission statement, write their values, write their priorities, and there is, in ITEC 842, we do a case study on SEMCO and Sembler. What's his first name? It's Ricardo Sembler. He's so funny. He talks about conferences he organises, and he gets all of these C-level executives. Sembler, Semco, Brazil. What's his name? Ricardo Sembler. This guy here. Ricardo Sembler is so funny. He'll talk about how we're going to organise a conference for C-level executives to talk about his radical way of reorganising work, and he'll ask them all to write down their mission statement and their values on cards, and they'll dutifully do it, and then he'll get all the cards, he'll shuffle up the cards, and then he'll redistribute the cards, and everybody will have the same card. Very similar card. They're all the same, because PR companies have written these things. Now, I went to Kmart Auto, as you can see here, and on the back of the card, the business card, or the front of the business card you get from Kmart Auto. I like to keep the card so I know what phone number to ring to make bookings. Here it says, to be the most trusted brand. Guys, you want to talk outside the place? Unless you've got a comment, question about what's relevant here. To be the most trusted brand for fixing cars the right way for the right price every time. And I thought that was magnificent, because that's exactly why a customer would visit Kmart Auto. They want to be able to trust you. Women in particular tend to be ripped off often by the traditional mechanic in exaggerating what's required. Parts are allegedly replaced that aren't replaced. Overpriced potentially, but I mean, us blokes too, can happen to them, but traditionally anyway. And so we want a place that can be trusted to fix your car and to fix it right, and not the cheapest price, not for the cheap. Does it say the cheapest price? It says the right price, which means a fair price every time. And quite rightly too, I remember I had a problem once with the repair and service, and I took the car back and they fixed it straight away, no questions asked. Because that's aligning with their vision. Keep the customer happy. We want you satisfied that we've fixed it right for the right price in a timely way. So you can have, in fact, a simple vision that meets these criteria. So the organisation needs to translate that mission of theirs into specific, concrete, measurable terms, set targets, where the organisation's headed, within which time frame, and that focuses the managers in their activities. So objectives should be smart. They should be very specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, time-related. And we see this in our project in terms of the scope and the goals of our project have to be specific, measurable. If you can't measure the output of the project, why are you doing it? Has to be assignable, who's responsible, has to be realistic, and has to be within a certain schedule. So we need a priority system. We need to know which projects are of the highest priority, and we need to build consensus. This is a gap because middle functional managers don't understand what is the strategy, what are the priorities here. It should be very objective, and it should be free of politics. So at the moment, New South Wales Stadiums has a lot of politics. And Michael Daly was interviewed by Alan Jones, and it sounds like he lost his temper. He told Alan Jones very late in the interview, and I'm going to sack you, because Alan Jones is on the board of the Sydney Cricket Ground, and the Sydney Cricket Ground wants the stadium knocked down, and he doesn't want to have the stadium knocked down, so he needs a new board. So you can see that these major projects of rebuilding, refurbishing our stadiums, or stadia, is rife with politics. And politics means dysfunction. There should be objective criteria for these projects. Then it's very clear what the goals are, what the need is. And we have this multi-project environment within an enterprise, and it means a lot of sharing of resources. And we need to have a prioritization, otherwise we end up starting many projects and finishing very few. Yes, what's your question?
Regarding the politics side, how can we avoid that? Because I've experienced that personally, wherein from a cost-benefit analysis point of view, you can see the portfolio that some projects are really beneficial, but at the same time, there are projects who get picked more because probably the sponsors or close to the CEO or something like that.
Correct.
I've experienced that the first time.
Yes, of course. Oh, there's a simple way to avoid them. Can anybody suggest? You're Jake?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Huh? How did you get it? David, you're phenomenal. Yes. He's very good, isn't he? Straight away he got the answer. You all heard what David said. What did David say then? You didn't see it? He said, get another job.
Or just let it go.
Specialist thing, and you usually get squashed.
Get involved in politics.
I'd have to get another job anyway.
Yes. We'll talk more. And Stephen has a whole session on politics. And the reality is politics are unavoidable. And as a project manager, you need the resources, you need the support of the powerful. And so you have to have ways of cultivating that support. And the most clearest way of doing that is thinking of influences exchange, IOUs, doing a good job, doing favors, sharing resources, and having people who owe you, so you can get the favor back. And that's the positive use of politics. So it's unavoidable, politics. There's a very interesting observation, and that experienced project managers are far more successful than novices. Is it because of their skill in managing the project? Yes, all those very good things. But I also think too And Ed Yerdon wrote a book on this. Ed Yerdon wrote a book. He's a very famous software engineer. Yourdon, Yerdon. And Ed Yerdon wrote a book called Death March Projects, or Death March. Let me try and find it. And a Death March project is one that's not possible. One that has half the resources it needs, or half the schedule, or can only meet half its objectives. So let's look at Ed Yerdon. Death March. Death. Oh. March. Yeah, Death March by Edward Yerdon. It's a great book, great read. No, how do I get rid of this? Where is the box to close this? Where? Already use it. See, that didn't work. See, usability, there. There we are, that didn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. How do I get rid of this pop-up?
It's not asking for money, it'll just say give it through the line.
No, but look, see, let's go. See? Anyway, so that's Death March by Edward. So usability, that's a shocking usability, terrible design. What happened to the testers there? They have to test these things.
They probably already gave it their email.
Yeah, no, it's pathetic, isn't it? Anyway, Death March. Oh, it gets 5 stars by Safari, whoever they are. And you get a free trial even. So novices end up joining Guide to Surviving Doomed Projects. Jake? Here, there you are, that there's an alarming number of doomed projects, political projects, etc., that can be quite devastating to the people who are recruited into these projects. So Ed Yerdon has a lot of insights there into the politics and into the problems. But, to summarize for you, because I'm not sure that all of you will go and find that book and read it. I have a suspicion that you won't. To summarize for you is the young and naive, with excessive, exuberance, optimism, join these projects. They at least get some work. They get some experience. They get some money. And then the project collapses into a huge heap. But then they've learned a huge amount about what are the characteristics of a meaningless, impossible project. And then they learn in the future to sense those characteristics and avoid them. So that is the difference in your experienced project manager and your novice. Is the experienced project manager knows what projects to avoid and has enough kudos, enough a reputation that they don't have to stoop so low as to agree to participate in a death march project. So when you're young, you have to suck it up, get the experience, and if you can survive long enough, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and then you will avoid it in the future. So read Ed Yerdon's book. It will give you a lot of insight into the real world. Ooh. So Jake, a good question. So we implement strategy through projects. We focus on how the strategy will be realized. We maintain this link through the project. And we need resources, we need action, we need prioritization, of course. In terms of strategy, we also can look at the steep or pestle factors. We assess our core business, we develop scenarios according to steep, we look at contingency strategies, and we look at early indicators. Again, this is back to strategy development, a bit out of order, but that's Larson for you. These are Larson slides. And these are the steep factors. They're the same as pestle, is what's happening in our environment, social, technological, economic, environmental, political. If we look at this perfect storm from Macquarie University, positive storm, it's just gorgeous, it's extraordinary. We find that socially we have the parents of the burgeoning middle class in Asian countries, the parents who want to sacrifice for their children, want to facilitate and help their children with their education. Does that resonate with some of you? That's a very powerful social factor here, where sending your child to an Australian, not too badly ranked university is seen as being very important. Helping Macquarie University. Technologically, the university can record lectures, can use iLearn, can leverage technology to reduce its costs and to improve its service. Technology helps. The internet helps. Economically, Australia is quite good value. Our Australian dollar has been dropping substantially. It's down to 70 cents US, which helps the cost of our programs to overseas students. Economically, it's seen too that studies have shown that graduates will earn substantially more during your lifetime than if you hadn't a degree. And of course, clearly you're on this escalation path of where a master's is better than a bachelor's, and you'll earn more with a master's than with a bachelor's. So that's an economic argument. Environmentally, no, not a factor again. You know, climate change. If we're studying about climate change, maybe. Here, politically, Australia is a stable country politically. That's it. That's true. And Trump's America is much more racist. Make America great again, make America white again is what he's really saying. It's a dog whistle. So we can't hear a dog whistle. Only dogs can hear a dog whistle. It's within our ranges. We call it a dog whistle. It's a whistle to those who want the 1950s back again, white supremacists. And so yes, so you can see these factors work so beautifully from Macquarie University, giving it confidence to engage in expansion projects, expanding the campus, spending a lot of money doing so. Great business, as we've reflected before. So the benefits of a portfolio, thinking of our projects as part of a portfolio where we can balance risk and we can meet the needs of varying stakeholders, looking at this portfolio is it builds discipline that we need to address. So our state government accuses the Labor Party that they didn't build any transport infrastructure. They talked about a lot of projects and then cancelled them. So that is, I think, a correct accusation that the prior Labor government didn't have good discipline, that they would politically announce projects and then they would cave in and cancel them. You need strategic metrics, measures, so we'll know what success looks like. Prioritizing projects rather across objective criteria rather than politics or emotion, of course. Allocating the right resources, balancing risk. So we have some high-risk projects, but we have bread and butter projects as well. So that's again thinking in terms of a portfolio. Here, killing projects that don't end up not supporting strategy, and it gets more agreement having this portfolio management approach. So the system classifies the project. Primavera is an example of a project portfolio management system. You can have a look at Primavera. Much more advanced than MS Project, that only looks at one project. Have you used Primavera? Primavera Source? No, I don't think so. Well,
But is it used in the industry?
yes. Yes. It's Red Team. Red Team. There's two teams, Red Team and Blue Team. Who do you think's Red Team? Who do you think's Blue Team? No, SAP. SAP. So enterprise applications to red team and blue team. This is Red Team, goodness sake. So Primavera. So you can watch the video. How long is the video? 2 minutes. We can watch a 2 minutes video.
Used to manage in excess of $250 billion of projects annually, Oracle's Primavera Enterprise Project Portfolio Management, or P6 EPPM, is the world's most powerful, flexible, and easy-to-use solution for prioritizing, planning, managing, and executing projects, programs, and portfolios. Primavera P6 EPPM is a cloud-based software-as-a-service solution backed by a global network of Oracle Project Portfolio Management professionals and the assured security, scalability, performance, and support from one of the world's largest cloud vendors. Primavera P6 EPPM extends, complements, and leverages your existing Oracle Enterprise Management solutions, including Oracle E-Business Suite and Oracle Business Intelligence, as well as ERP solutions from SAP and others. Information on tap, anywhere, for everyone. Personalized dashboards offer tailored project portfolio insight across the enterprise with role-based analysis. This rich, modern, real-time reporting pulls data from Primavera's centralized repository of enterprise project information, ensuring that you and your team have access to an always accurate, single version of the truth for enhanced decision-making. Primavera P6 Visualizer graphically monitors project performance against plan and complements Primavera Analytics with rich, time-phased views. Even large, complex schedules come to life and can be imported and exported to facilitate sharing. And this information is available on your mobile device, keeping you connected and informed wherever and whenever you need it most. Primavera P6 EPPM provides a true enterprise role-based solution for managing projects of any size. It adapts to varying levels of complexity across projects and intelligently scales to meet the needs of all functions in your organization. To find out more, please visit oracle.com/primavera.
So that's an example of what we mean by a project portfolio system that are used by enterprises. So MS Project is just really a baby. So when we're using a system like that, it enables us to classify the project according to risk, according to compliance, must do, keep the lights on, run the business, or grow the business, transform the business, what type of project it is. And then what are the selection criteria? So on compliance, selection criteria, well, you must, when is this legislation coming in, and what is the latest time that we can do this project? Yes, that's right. That's a selection criterion. Sources of proposals, where did this come from, who are the stakeholders, how are we going to evaluate proposals, how are we going to rank them, and then, as we saw with Primavera, once the projects are underway, what we're looking at is usually light system, whether it's green light, all good, yellow, it's challenged, red, it's in trouble. And we can use a bubble chart, and the bubble moves along the x-axis according to time, it moves along the y-axis according to size of the project, and then the bubble, we have the color of the bubble, which tells us whether it's doing okay or not. So something that's well progressed is very big, and red I would be very worried about. So here in classification is an example of compliance, of operational, keep the lights on, and strategic, which is grow the business. So we'll look at some of these criteria shortly. Of course, there are financial criteria. There are non-financial in terms of relevance. And what's used these days is a multi-weighted scoring model, which we'll have a look at. Maybe if I can progress the slide. There we are. I bounced it off the wall. It's infrared. Yeah, the receiver is down there. I don't have a direct line, but I can bounce it. Let's see. Maybe I need to use the right angle. So we can have an example of non-strategic. Yeah, it doesn't work on here. Oh, it's too high up. Look, this pointer works very well here. This pointer here. Oh, the laser won't work off an LCD screen. It can blind you. It can work up there, but I can break my neck doing that. Or I'm going to use an analog pointer. So we've got non-financial criteria. This is a bit financial, really, to get a larger market share. But blocking, the Apple ecosystem is a very good example. You need to have an Apple device to be part of the, you need iOS to be part of the Apple ecosystem, of iTunes and App Store, etc. An enabler product that we can introduce sales to more profitable. So companies like Canon almost give away their inkjet cartridge printers because they make all their money selling the inkjet cartridges. Yeah, but you can get a really, really cheap, good scanner. Never think of it as a printer. I don't think of mine as a printer at all. It can be to develop a core for next gen. It could be to reduce our dependency on unreliable suppliers or to prevent government regulation intervention. So there are a lot of non-financial strategic criteria, but multi-criteria is very good. A checklist is going tick, 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 tick. Does it meet all the boxes? Everybody's inclined to say check, 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 check. And then it doesn't help us to rate, to quantify the projects at all. So what we prefer to do is this multi-weighted scoring model. Now, what's that you're thinking to yourself? Maybe you're thinking about your Facebook friends. Not sure. It's not bouncing very well, is it? Battery might be waning. Hello, come on. Wake up. So we can have selection questions. You can read these yourself in terms of trying to work out what criteria are we going to use. This is a good one. In terms of risk, is that we don't want to take on too much risk, not have too many risky projects. And we can continue with the questions. But here's an example. This is what we mean by a multi-weighted matrix approach for screening projects. So firstly, we have the criteria from all those questions. We looked at what criteria are important for us. So stay within our core competency. That has a factor of 2 multiplier. It's quite important. Strategic fit's very important, etc., etc. ROI of 18% plus, very important too. So financial is important, etc. So those are our weights. And then we have our project. This is a bit subjective, I know, is we rate each project against these criteria, and then we multiply. So project 1 gets a 2, gets a 24, gets a 4, gets a 15, gets a 0, gets a 6, gets a 15, and those numbers add up to 66. Yeah? You multiply the score, 1 to 10, by the weight. Yeah? So which project would you do? 5. That's right, you do 5. Why would you do 1? Yeah, you do 5. That's what this model tells you. So that's what we mean about objective criteria. It's not. Oh, it's a battery that's going, I think. That's why. So we need this screening process. So a screening process starts up with a project idea. Then we collect data, and we need to meet screening criteria, strategic fit, ROI, payback, etc. And then we evaluate the project against these criteria, and if it's negative, we abandon. It's not meeting the hurdles. These are all hurdles, obviously. But if it meets the hurdles, then we pursue, and we give it to the priority team. And they have to worry about the whole portfolio of what resources are available and balancing risk across the portfolio. And hopefully that's not a political discussion. It's an objective discussion. Oh, well, that's just junk anyway. Shouldn't be there. And sometimes they ask for more information, and sometimes they periodically reassess the priorities. But based on these objective criteria, they want to reject some projects, but then they accept projects, and some need to be held for resources. Resources are not available, and some get the go-ahead. That's usually when you're hired as the project manager. Now you've got a good battery. Aren't you naughty still? Switch it off and on. Reboot, kick in the cuts. So we need senior management input to provide guidance, and we often have a governance team that helps us to prioritize the projects. And then we balance risk and reward. We can use some very interesting matrices for this, 2x2 matrices. They're very common in strategic management. Look at the risk I'm taking on at the moment. I want to stand around here so that people who are talking, I can see them and boot them out of the lecture theatre. Or because I'm standing here, they won't talk because they don't want to get caught. So that's one risk I'm treating. But I'm taking on another risk, is whether my laser will advance the slide. But I just put new batteries in, so we're going to see. I'm willing to take on the risk now. So you always think about the risk in what you're doing. So we have bread and butter projects, which are run the business. But then we have oysters, which can be also called the problem child, but they can generate pearls. What we want to do is avoid the white elephants. Does everybody know the story of the white elephants? Especially this audience should know the story of the white elephants. No, don't know the white. Nobody knows what a white elephant. What's a white elephant? Beg your pardon? So I think it was in India. You had sultans. Do you have sultans in India? Who's the big guy? The king. What's an Indian king called? What? You have to be specific. Can't you have a sultan? You could have a sultan. No? What do you have in India? A Raja? Okay, the Raj. The Raj? So let's say the Raj. We'll call them sultans anyway. We'll call this a Middle Eastern story. So you had two rival sultans, two different kingdoms. Now, this is an Indian story because it's got elephants in it. You don't have many elephants around the Middle East. Hold on. You guys don't help me at all. Sultanas, yeah, they're grapes. Origin is Arabic abstract noun, authority, rulership, leader. Here, the term is distinct from king, Muslim communities, feminine. Sultans? Maharajas, okay. But anyway, in my story, I'm going to call it, there's Maharaja there. You see. So royal and noble ranks in Iran, Turkey, cooks in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan. Does that ring a bell with any of our audience participants, these countries? Yes, possibly. And you have a high king or a sultan, not a sultana, right? Right, so we have two rival sultans in India, and one doesn't like the other. Now you've got to remember that white elephants are very rare and very holy animals, very sacred animals. So the Sultan finds some white elephants, a very rare herd of white elephants, and gives them as a gift to his rival. What does his rival have to do with these white elephants? Can he slaughter them? No, he has to care for them, does he not? Are these not sacred animals? No, he can't in this story. In this story, he has to keep them and they bankrupt him. And that's how the rival gets his edge. That's the story of the white elephant. That's why these projects showed promise at one time, no longer viable. I'm surprised you don't know the analogy.
What are the other examples of the white elephants? Because so far, what I've experienced, usually these are seasonal products. That's sort of unique in terms.
David, what's a white elephant project? Give me a white elephant project, please. Maybe. What about the light rail? The light rail is turning into a white elephant. Gladys thought it would be knocked up in no time at all. A tram running down the CBD, is it doing that? It ain't, because of all the services that nobody can see. They have to be relocated for no direct gain other than to make the light rail. So it can be argued that the light rail is a white elephant.
Are all systems that aren't updated and eventually become legacy systems also considered white?
No. So we have legacy systems. Legacy systems have been written off over a long time. They're exceptionally productive. They can't generalize about legacy systems. Do you mean those systems that work?
Well, the systems that work up until the point where they're
Well, once a system becomes obsolete, it's obsolete. You can kill it, but you can't kill the white elephant. Yes, it will fit. It will fit under the dogs analogy. It will fit. And I'll show you the dogs in a moment. So this is the very famous Boston Consulting Group matrix here. And what we have is a question mark that's got low market share, low growth, turns into a star, eventually becomes a cash cow. And this might be your legacy system if you like. Historically becomes a dog, and it needs to be deleted, needs to be terminated. So one way of looking at success is to consider the iron triangle of meeting the schedule, meeting the budget, and meeting the scope. But that has a real problem to it, because you can be within budget, you can be within schedule, you can meet all the requirements, and it still ends up shelfware. So there's a difference between building the product right, which I just mentioned, versus building the right product. That's why we have to relate it back to strategy to see whether it meets strategic goals or not. So another way of defining success, gentlemen, we'll have our break soon, don't worry, you can leave if you like, is meeting client expectations, satisfaction requirements, quality, and ensuring the team is also satisfied. So you have functional requirements, quality requirements within its constraints, but making sure it adds value. So becoming a culture vulture, you'll find that independent software vendors specialize in specific areas because they understand those areas very well. They understand the client's requirements better than the client understands their own requirements. So we have to understand the scenery, the language, and Tomsit, this is from Tomsit, he recommends these rapid planning sessions, group interviews, to make sure that we're doing the right project before we're worrying about doing it right. Is this the project that's going to add value for the client? Tomsit recommends success sliders. The problem is that a lot of these sliders can be switched on and doesn't give you the priority. That we have a limited economic focus, that besides the financial benefits, is we should have the intangibles as well. I'm not going to show you the clip on Show Us the Money because you've been busy talking, so you miss out on that. Tomsit as well talks about the fact that the project team is worried about the project outputs, that there are objectives for the project team worries about the outputs, and it's the stakeholders, the users, the sponsor, the management, the organization that has to deliver the outcomes. And the outputs are delivered very early. But what we need is a review of the project to ensure what we need is benefits realization to make sure that the outcomes are in fact delivered, which takes management, change management. So, described by Gain and Sarson in 1979 is Iracus. I talk about frequently. There are three classes of benefits: increasing revenue, avoiding cost, and improving service. And for a CRM system, you can see very easily how it meets the Iracus model. Financial metrics. I think we'll take a break. We'll come back to these in a few minutes. The assignment. So you can't all come down and rush me at the end because I'm going to say, no, I gave you a chance. So, what's your question? Yeah, we had an email form. Did you read the email form? So cash flow is the amount of cash that is spent in that week. Yeah, cost of the resources for that week. Very easy question, really. Yes, that's it. Easy. Use the stuff between your ears. Between your left ear and right ear. That's what you have to use to work it out. I beg your pardon? The what? Peak? Peak is highest. Highest. The most. The maximum. That's a peak. And the minimum's called a trough. Peak to trough Sydney house prices have dropped already, I think more than 10%, probably 12, 13% already. Might be 20% drop, peak to trough. Problem if you've bought during the peak. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, the risk management. Based on the information I've given you, yeah. If you find additional references, as long as you reference them, so I can check your references, that's fine too. But you have enough information in the scenario given, I think. But it's okay, I give you a real scenario, and you can do some real research on it if you like. It'd be insightful, really. That's it. I don't expect a large number of words. I think under 100,000 words. Under? Maybe. Make it 200,000 then. No, I extended it. Yeah, really. Because that's fine. A student showed me his submission just a minute ago. What he had done is he had copied and pasted the questions, and that gave him a high similarity, which is perfectly fine. But I suggested just to take it. You don't need to cut and paste all the questions. I know what the questions are. Sorry, and that would reduce your similarity. And the student had already submitted. Perfectly fine. So submit early and get it over and done with. But now, so can everybody download MS Project? Stephen's worked out it comes from the Azure site. And there's still the question about the lab. Theoretically, the EMC lab is available to you, but that's confusing because there's a big classroom with PCs that is always locked or has a class running. Then there's a little room at the back off to the left that has about 4 or 5 PCs, half of them broken, and never has MS Project working because it requires a license. But I've given Stephen that task. This is what happens when you have a convener, right, a boss. Stephen, I've given him the task to resolve whether there will be a lab with MS Project. That's unresolved at this point. Could possibly be one of the broken machines in the little room at the end of the year. You know what I'm talking about, do you? Yeah. We'll see. Okay, any other questions? You've got 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, yeah. Because of the kerfuffle, the hoo-ha about downloading MS Project, because we hadn't given Microsoft, your authentication details. That's all. That required an activity to be done. Okay, we're all good? Right as rain? Honky-dory? So financial metrics are very important. And in the next 15, 20 minutes or so, I can't give you a course of Accounting 101, can I? No. But I can make you semi-competent in trying to calculate financial metrics. And that is important as part of the business case for your project, your group assignment that Stephen will be marking. So I've found that the easiest way to teach you these concepts is simply to give you an example. And in your reference folder there's an example. What it is the business case for an automated data collection case study. And I have no idea, I've never bothered to read even what is this data collection system. I don't even know. I don't care. But what I did like about this case study is the way in which they presented the financial metrics. So here's an example of the financial tables that you'll need to create to do a financial analysis. The first step is what we call an income statement. So an income is all about revenue, all about profit, less all of our expenses, giving us a net income. It's a very simple concept called a profit and loss statement, an income statement. What's our profit? What's our loss? So in this instance, quite rightly, and what students always forget to do, is you have an expense of, you have to depreciate the cost of the system over the life of the system. So what was the upfront cost of this system? $125,000. So we say that it should have a life of 5 years, which seems reasonable, so we have to depreciate the system over its usable life. Then we have to service the system. We have a service contract, there's supplies, there's installation which comes up front. These are all costs. But the system, because it's an automated data collection system, it gives us labour savings. And also, because of the reduction in cycle time, it means we hold less inventory. Reducing inventory is a balance sheet item. It's turning one asset called inventory into another asset called cash. So reducing inventory per se does not hit our income statement. But the holding cost of that inventory is a savings. We need less warehousing here. And if we do a subtotal, we get an operating income. And then we do interest. So not only do we have less inventory, but we don't have to finance this inventory. So we have a saving in interest here. And then we have a pre-tax income. Australian company tax is 30% at the moment, and Trump reduced American company tax, I think, to 15%. It's quite a sugar hit, and America didn't need it at the time, but buys popularity. And so, depending on what your income tax is, you get a net income. So, what is the total profit over 5 years that we enjoy from this system? What is it?
286,000.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much. Is this number here? Is that good or bad? That's all right. That's all right. Compared to what, David?
300,000.
That's bad compared to 300,000. It's less.
200,000.
That would be an ROI. So if we want to compare the profit we make to what we spent, we do an ROI. So the fact that there is a net profit, and it looks like a really big number, is probably okay, but we really don't know. The answer to that question is I don't know how good that is. compared to what? So, the next thing we need to do is a cash flow. And the cash flow income statement is fairly similar. What's the total profit we make on the cash flow statement after 5 years? Is that the same number as before? That's the same. So what's the difference between the income statement and the cash flow? There is a key difference. Some businesses, for instance, in Australia we have a GST. And the GST is collected by businesses on behalf of the government. And every business registered for GST has to submit a BAS, business activity statement, every quarter. And you elect whether it's cash or it's accrual. And for small businesses, they often just elect cash. This is how much cash I collected, this is how much cash I spent, and that gives you the deduction of the GST you collected for the government, less the GST you paid on purchases from a cash accounting point of view. Some business can be cash, but the bigger businesses use accrual accounting, where they can pre-spend for something. So, for instance, in this case, we pre-spent for this system and we expect it to last 5 years. So, by using a depreciation here, system depreciation, this is an accrual, normal accrual style. But from a cash perspective, we spent it up front. So, cash is different to accrual. It's the two methods of accounting. As well, accrual is more sophisticated because it could be you order stuff, you use stuff, you haven't paid for it. But without accrual accounting, you aren't recognizing it with your accounts, and it can give you a curve forward. So, as an example, for employees, you have to pay superannuation. Businesses don't have to pay the superannuation until 3 weeks after the work time. But you should use accrual accounting and account for it. And we have a big problem in Australia is a lot of dodgy businesses don't pay superannuation. They haven't accrued for it, it suddenly becomes due and they sort of forget to pay the staff superannuation. And there's talk about making that a criminal offence, underpaying wages. Good idea. I would encourage more fairness into the economy. So accrual accounting is more powerful. But anyway, from a cash accounting point of view, we can't hide the fact that we actually spend $125,000 up front, and we have these other upfront costs, but at the end of the day, we still make the same as you'd expect over the life of the system. So that's the difference. So now one thing we can calculate is the ROI. We can say that the upfront investment is 125, but there's a bit of art in accounting because you could also argue the upfront investment was 156. But it depends whether you want a big ROI number. So if you want the bigger ROI number, use the smaller denominator and you choose 125. Accountants do good books. That's right. We do not rely solely on financial projections because we know it's being cooked. So here we use 125 as the capital. How did we get the 5-year average earnings? How did we get this number of 57284? That's right. We divided 286421. You take that and divide it by 5. I bet you get 57284. And that gives, and that includes the 57284 includes the system depreciation. Students usually forget to do. So the ROI is 46%. How does that look? Good or bad? Pretty good. Not many banks will give you 46% interest. If you put $125,000 in the bank, you're not going to get 46% per year for 5 years, are you? It looks pretty good, doesn't it? So the hurdle rate, can sometimes be 10% for a long-term infrastructure, can be 20-25% for something more short-term or higher risk. I think we saw 18% used in the Glasson's example in this multi-weighted scoring table, which seems quite a reasonable number, hurdle rate. So we need the cash flow for payback, because payback doesn't worry about niceties of system depreciation. Payback wants to calculate when do we get our money back. So we have to back it out. So in the first year we back out 100, well at the beginning we have minus 156 here that we've spent. That comes from here, minus 156. But then in the first year we make 56, so we have about 100,000. But then don't we get most of that back in the second year? So we only have about 5,000, so only about 5% left. So we back out. We back out the 56, we back out the 94, we round up, and it ends up being 2.1 years payback. So how does 2.1 years look as a payback period? Good or bad? Why is that good? So after 2 years, 2.1 years, you can say, God, that was a crap system. And you can upgrade the system. You have a look, I've got a Subaru XV, and I bought it quite some time ago. I bought it in 2012. And you know that body is still a current Subaru XV. Subaru has been very, very clever. So 6 years later, well, coming up to 7 now, 7 years later, the current Subaru XV, the crossover SUV, good basic car, gets me around anyway, they've got the same body because they'll take a 4 or 5 year period to fully depreciate the tooling, then design costs that they invested, and then all they do is upgrade some simple things like inserts into the bumper, the lights, the dash, some componentry that they've updated. They finally updated the wheels at the back. I like the old wheels anyway, that was very distinctive on the car. But they've changed that too. But nothing that takes a lot of tooling, and then their profit is greatly boosted in the next period of time after they're fully depreciated. Because when they release the design and release the car, they don't know its longevity because they don't know the competition and what the competition will look like after 5 years. So it would be very dangerous for them to depreciate the tooling and design for a period longer than 5 years. But by extending it, Mazda did the same with the Mazda 3. They kept the same design again for a very long period of time, and then they were able to actually undercut all their competition because they fully depreciated their investment until it became a dated car, and then they had to redesign a few years ago. Now they have to redesign the Mazda 3. So we see this issue of payback period being very important, because the shorter the payback period, the lower the risk of the project, because it means we've paid for the project, and if we want to, we can ditch it. Or what companies would much rather do is enjoy the extra profitability after they've fully depreciated the system. But there's a problem with ROI. Does anybody know what the problem is with this calculation? It's actually not financially correct. It's incorrect. No, it's assumed, David, that these numbers are... No. All financial projections are estimated. Then possibly they all can be cooked. But what is wrong with the metric ROI?
It's all based on assumptions.
Yes, but then all financial projections are based on assumptions. So a project has got financial benefits, the tangibles. The project also has intangibles. You're right that financial criteria do not take into account intangible benefits. That's a common for all financial criteria, correct? But there's a specific problem for it. Let's say that, David, I convince you to loan me $1,000. And I said, David, look, I need $1,000. I'm good for it. I'll give it back to you in a year. And I convinced you. You're convinced? So in a year's time, I give him back his $1,000. I already know he's not happy. Why? He already told you why he's not happy. Why is he not happy? The juice, the V, and the interest. It's my loan shark. It's after your activity. The interest is, I don't know, 5-10% a day. All they want is the interest. They break a few legs, just pay me the interest. I don't want you to repay the capital. So does ROI take into account the time value of money? That's its flaw. So money we get in 5 years' time is worth a lot less than money we get today. Because the money has a time value. We can take money, we can invest it, and we can get a return on it. So to compensate for the time value of money, we have another calculation called the net present value. And to get it as a percentage, it's called the internal rate of return, the IRR, gets it as a percentage. But just for the net present value, it's actually quite an easy formula. The net present value, what is this project worth to us today? Today's money is negative, of course, the upfront investment. And then the sum of all of the returns we get, but corrected for the interest rate. So, in the upfront, the present value is 1 because it's real money spent today. That's minus $156,000 of today's money. But in a year's time, we get $56,000. But I need to divide it by 1 plus 0.1 to the power of 1. So I divide it by 1.1, or I multiply it by 0.909. Then in the next year, you can see that the present value that I'm multiplying with drops, because it's to the square, and then to the cube, to the fourth, to the fifth. And you can see that in 5 years' time, at a discount factor of 10%, is money I get in 5 years' time is only worth 62 cents a dollar. So it's not worth $286,000 at all. The net present value is actually 172. Yes. So we call this a discounted cash flow. And as a percentage, we could use this number divided by 5, and that would give us an IRR, internal rate of return, if you like. So that's a more sophisticated measure that takes into account time value. So these are the financial metrics that I want you to understand. And was that easy by using an example? That's a shortcut I've taken to teach you how to use financial metrics. Because you're not accountants, but financial criteria are often important in strategic projects. In run the business, I don't think you've got much choice, but you can compare different projects based on their financial criteria, and compliance, you have to comply. But there might be different ways of complying. And again, you can look at what is the most cost-effective method potentially. So that's project success. Part of success, as we saw, is looking at the financial return. Well, how do we know what the project's going to cost us? How do we know? Estimation. It's very good. How do we estimate? It depends on the project, yes. Depends on the requirements. So But David Worthington has to implement a trial electronic health record. What should the budget be? $1? $100,000? $1 million? $10 million? $100 million? I've given it to you exponentially. Where, how do we estimate? I beg your pardon?
By task or by task, like if you split it into different like subcontractor, you can get a price like this kind of
Yes, absolutely you can. If you look at your assignment 1, and I ask you, what's the total cost of the project? Is that not the budget? It's the baseline plan. How do you get that number? Yeah, we have a piece of software, MS Project, that adds it all up. So we call that bottom up. We decompose the project into its tasks. We look at the cost of each task, and we add it all up. Bottom up. That's a good method. Are there any other methods?
Top down.
Yes, if we have bottom up, top down. So David, what's top down?
They go, put their finger up in the wind and they say, I think you can pay $500 million for that project.
Right. And that could be based on the gut feel. That could...
Sense and is there a need for it? Getting votes by putting money towards this thing?
So, is top-down even valid? If it's this complete guesstimate?
Well, of course they would have experts who would try and tell them that they can't draw blue lines with red pens, but so they need to buy red pens or so there would be some cost estimation there, but they can purely budgetary figures. They would be it's going to cost exactly this much, and all it's very much negotiation. So inflated and then bargained away and inflated away.
That's all very true. So, is top-down a valid method? Yes or no? No? Yes.
The Opera House was top down.
We saw what happened there. Our £3.6 million ended up at $170 million.
Can it work if the panels been done?
Well, that's an analogy method. Is that you benchmarking? Is that valid? Yes. So all of what you said is valid. All of it is right, and all of it is useful. So let's organise our thoughts a bit more rigorously, shall we? We can do that fairly quickly because we've worked it all out anyway. So estimate, we've introduced project management as being a unique endeavour for the organisation of small projects causing big problems, of global competition, the need for project management. We've looked at strategy tonight, that it starts with strategy, projects implement strategy. Stephen is going to talk about project organisation, organisational breakdown structure. I've talked a bit about it with work breakdown structure. We've talked about defining the project in terms of the work breakdown structure. So now we're up to estimation. So I told you we would go through last and basically cover to cover. So estimating, it's this process of forecasting or approximating the time cost of completing the deliverables, but it's also balancing expectations and the need for control. We need to know how much it's going to cost. So two types, top down, bottom up. But why? Why do we need the estimates? Well, you can't do an ROI, can you, until you know the I part of and you know the R. So to help us make decisions. But also, when we do a work breakdown structure, it enables us to schedule the work and get the resources to do the recruitment. By doing a work breakdown structure and knowing the resources, we know how long it's going to take. That's why schedule is important. I ask you a simple question: what's the finish date of your project in assignment 1? Looking at the ROI, we can see whether the benefits warrant the expenditure, whether it should be done. We can look at cash flow, and I ask you about cash flow. It confuses the hell out of you, but we want to know when our money is being spent. By having a baseline plan, a baseline Gantt chart, we can then do a tracking Gantt chart, and we can measure progress. We can even do earned value analysis to MS project. Yeah, and we can get this time phase budget to establish the baseline, which enables us to measure progress. So those 2 points should be juxtaposed with that last slide of mine. So how good are our estimates? Well, it depends. What does it depend on? Larson is a good text. Larson gives us from these authors' experience what influences estimates. The planning horizon, the further out we're trying to plan, the less accurate it's going to be. The duration. The longer the project, the less accurate it's going to be. Short projects, if they're a little bit exuberant, we can work a bit harder, get together, and we can push the project over the line. Can't do that with a big project. The people, if we don't get the quality people we're expecting, quality of software engineers, architects, etc., then our estimate is going to get blown out. So it's dependent on people. It depends on the structure of the project and its organization. If it's a matrix structure, it will be much more challenged. If it's a team dedicated to the project manager who has control over these resources, they come bright and early every morning. Boss, what are we supposed to do today? Then he or she has control, and he or she is much more likely to stay within budget. If it's matrix, and please come and spend a few minutes on my project. I've got free beer and pizza, come on. It makes it harder, doesn't it? Yeah. It makes it harder, and that's often the case with matrix structures. Estimates are always padded. If you're going to be measured on your ability to bring in the project within budget, you're going to want to pad that budget as much as possible. It's very bad practice, but it will happen all the time. It's better to assume everything will run smoothly and then have a contingency. That's an objective way of handling risk, of exceeding budget, of exceeding schedule, having a contingency. And an obvious contingency, a buffer. But bosses don't like to show you their contingency, you're measured on your estimate, so then you're forced to pad your estimate. Politics. Organizational culture here. If you're going to be sacked, if your project goes over budget, well, you've got to pad the estimate even more. If, however, it's a learning organization, we learn from our mistakes, there's no difference in reward from the project manager who has been on budget, on schedule, to the project manager who's had a very challenging project, but has been professional. Then that's conducive to a learning organization. Other non-project factors, if you're doing construction and the weather is terrible, weather can affect your schedule and your costs, bless you, and in which case that's a non-project factor, so something out of your control. So very interesting list that affects the quality. So What's the best way for estimating time, cost, resources? Is have people who've done the tasks make the estimates. Get buy-in from your team, but have professionals there. Have several people make the estimates. Based on normal conditions and normal level of resources, then later have a contingency. Use consistent measurements. Treat each task as independent, so you can break it down. Don't make allowances for contingencies, they come later. That's padding your estimates. Adding a risk assessment. So by understanding which tasks are high risk, you can have that spun off as a separate pre-project, a qualifying project, and that will avoid surprises to the stakeholders. That's building some agile methodology there, which is good practice. So there's a summary, a nice little diagram of all of those points. So we have top-down from somebody who has experience, made by top managers, often because they can compare the project to something done before. It's very good and useful in the early stages of planning, and bottom up can often be a check to see whether it's realistic or not. So do both is what Larson recommends. So top down at the very early stage of strategic decision making, it can be high uncertainty, or it could just be an internal small project, or the scope we're still not sure of. So we have a range basically. Here, bottom up is where cost and time are important. And they're important when we have a fixed price contract with bid for a government. And that's what Asiano did, based on the tender document. So they worked out what their costs are going to be. They added their profit margin, and then they added their contingency. And they won the contract. And then they found the requirements were flawed. And then they sued the government. Then they did a go slow. To further motivate the government to settle the legal dispute, which was settled. Not a I think it cost us another $500 million, us being the taxpayers. Yeah. So fixed price, here you can't afford any scope creep. And certainly if the customer wants details, that's fine too. That's perfectly fine. It's very good for a partnership too, is to say, based on these requirements, this is what we're going to charge you. We change the requirements, we change our charge. It's fine, you're a customer. So, the preferred approach recommended by Larson is making these rough, top-down estimates here, developing then the work breakdown structure, who's going to do it, the organizational breakdown structure, adding the resources, then you do your top-up, and then compare the two, develop your schedule, and reconcile the differences. So, what are the top-down approaches? There's a number of methods. There's consensus, and we'll look at the Delphi method, consensus of experts. There's ratio method, which is a bit silly, is you just break it down by previous ratios, and we'll show you that in a moment. Apportion, I'll show you. Apportion is a good method. For instance, in the building industry, it's about 1,500. Used to be, I think it's probably now about 2,000. It's about let's say $2,000 per square meter. So if you have 100 square meter home, it will cost you $200,000 to build. That's a small home, it's a very small one in fact. So 200 square meters would be more common. That would be a $400,000 home. It's pricey. So 1,500 to 2,000 square. So a apportion method. Function points a bit silly, as I'll show you in a moment. I'm a bit cynical. Learning curves is not that relevant. Learning curve is a true phenomenon. It's a real thing that happens. So, for instance, I'll finish at about 9 o'clock. You'll find every lecture series I deliver, it's going to finish about 9 o'clock. How do I do it? It's because I've been doing this before. few times before. I know when these were getting restless, I went very fast at one stage there. And then I said, okay, forget it. Take a break. Disappeared. I was using my experience there. So because I have experience in doing this and learning, I get quite efficient at doing this. The same as marking and everything, I do that very efficiently because I have a lot of experience in doing it. You'll find in any task. Anybody like to cook? Anybody like to cook? Yeah? Do you have your favourite dishes? Are you pretty good at cooking your favourite dish? Pretty consistent? Yeah? I do a good chicken curry. You know? I do a good spaghetti bolognese. Steak roll. Yeah? I love repertoire. A few things. I can count on one hand. I should. Yeah, if I can cook, I'm not a cook. But I can cook a few things, and they're pretty consistent. The family knows what they're going to get. The wife's busy working, she has a nail shop, and I'll ask her, what do you think of my cooking? And she says, well, I'm hungry and I've got no choice.
No surprise.
That's not bad.
She loves to eat it.
I think she is, because she's hungry. She has no choice. Right? So that's what a learning curve is. When we do the same thing over, we get very good at it. But to me, that's not very relevant. Because if your projects are very repetitive, such as you're a builder of project homes, I wouldn't call them project homes, I'd call them process homes.
It's like a roller.
Because to you it's a process. You have everything covered. If the ground is unstable and you have to dig the piers for the concrete foundation deeper, the client has to pay. Any variation, client has to pay. Anything that's going to change your project, they pay. This is what we deliver, and we have scheduled payments. You don't make your payment, you stop work on your home. They have everything all nailed down. Use the same contractors all the time. So for them, they've gone through their learning curve, and it's not really a project, it's a process. So I'm not sure, Mr. Larson, that that's particularly relevant in our case that we're going to learn. But it does work if your project team is very experienced and there's some similarity in things that you've learned. That's why independent software vendors love to specialize, like Salesforce.com, customizing it for CRM systems. You've got quite an ecosystem there of developers. They really know how the code works. They really know how to quickly customize it for you. So there is a learning curve. So this is apportionment. It's a bit silly, where we have a total project cost of $500,000 and then we break it down. And interesting in this example, Larson shows us how silly the method is, because 40% of our project cost is in testing. For goodness sake, is it that bad, really? You have to spend that much on testing? It's very silly. But it shows it's just numbers he's pulled out of his rear end. There. This is the function point, which is really silly. Gary Bean, who invented this system here. This is called curve fitting. It's a terrible trap that researchers fall into. Shocking trap. Here's the point. You have random data. Really crappy random data. Could come from looking at a stock chart of pricing. It's here. There's a huge amount of randomness. And what affects a share price is market sentiment. At the moment, will Trump do a deal with China? What's happening with Brexit? China is slowing down. Europe is a bit of a basket case prior to Brexit even. You know, and all of these factors on a daily basis can affect your share price. It's not smooth at all. But what you can do is you can develop an algorithm to fit the data, and that's called curve fitting. And it's useless for forecasting where the stock price will be in the future. It's a huge trap that analysts fall into, technical analysts fall into, and this is exactly the same problem here. But Barry Bean had a whole series of projects where the cost varied from low to extraordinarily high. How do I develop a model that will somehow fit what is essentially random data? So you develop something silly like this. So for instance, if you have a certain number of interfaces, all you need to do is classify some of them as high complexity, and suddenly it's times 15. And similarly to outputs, I'll just put some as high, and here you can get any number you like. You can estimate a cost just by juggling. First of all, this is a bit silly anyway. Inputs, outputs, inquiries, files, and interfaces. This is not all that relevant, even to contemporary systems today. The level of stakeholder engagement is more important. Experience in building this type of system. How not the number of interfaces, yes, but can you even integrate with them? Are they designed for integration? So this doesn't even ask the right questions, but you can estimate any number you like simply by manipulating these three. So I'm very cynical of function point as a method of calculating, estimating project. So here's an example. Yeah, all you've got to do is change. See, files, early files, high complexity, suddenly we've got this huge number of 12. See how it's easily manipulated. So, micro. The template, parametric, apply to specific tasks or work breakdown structure phases, or whatever. So here, this is good. This is a range, and Microsoft Project can't handle this. It's very, very basic software. So this is an example of a low, average, high estimate of range that's possible here, and a risk level. So I like this way of looking at a range. This is this phase estimating here, which Thomson supports, and that is as we go down this funnel of through the phases, we get more and more accurate estimates. So comparing top down and bottom up, this is Larson's comparison, which again take with a bit of grain of salt. Basically saying top down is, he's saying that top down has a wider range of accuracy, and talks about the different methods. But from Thomson, we talk about this funnel, which is more reasonable, where to begin with, we can be 4 times, or 25% of the actual cost. But to begin with, it's very, very broad until we initiate the project, we do the feasibility, we do a detailed requirements analysis, and then we go down to the finally, at this stage is estimation point 4, we're much more accurate. So there's a funnel of accuracy, more realistic. So level of detail in our estimates, it depends on the management level and the work breakdown structure. How fine-grained you make depends on the complexity of the project. The more complex the project, the more fine-grained your work breakdown structure has to be. But excessive detail is costly, and he says insufficient is costly. This is very theoretical. We'll talk about agile, which is low documentation, low detail. It's just we plan the next phase, the next iteration, and see where we're at, and it solves this problem of planning and replanning endlessly.
So do we do project by budget and agile?
Yes. That's, I want to comment more because I asked you that question in your assignment. That's the commentary I want you to make, is what are the limitations of MS Project? How would you use it? when would you use it? It has a role, but not really the role that the engineers think of it, because it's this very kind of fine grain which needs to be changed every 5 minutes in your project. So the contingencies, they should be added independently at the end to offset uncertainty. Here, and this is the problem in this whole approach of bottom-up, is unforeseen events may dictate a reformulation of the budget and schedule, and typically with a software project that happens on a daily basis. You spend all your time updating the baseline. That's why in IT we developed agile methodologies to avoid obviate this whole problem of this engineering approach. Now, this is a new slide from Larson. He talks about these mega projects, very large-scale, complex ventures that cost more than $1 billion or more, take many years to complete, many stakeholders. So high-speed rail, airports, healthcare, reforming the Olympics, etc. It's a double whammy because it costs more than expected and underdeveloped, and they're sometimes white elephants, over budget, undervalued, high cost. So mega projects are particularly challenging, but they don't need to fail. A very interesting example of this mega project are the baggage handling systems of new airports. So we had two famous failures. The new Heathrow terminal, I think it's Terminal 4, where it was a disaster when it opened in terms of baggage handling, and Denver International Airport also failed spectacularly when it first opened, the renovated airport, because of the complexity. So this would be a mega project. David, you had a comment? Oh, it's Terminal 5, thank you, Terminal 5, okay. So Terminal 5 was a big failure. Thanks for your help. But here's an example where, in fact, it can be engineered. It can work. And we'll go back, ironically, to the Middle East.
Looking behind the scenes at a major airport is an exciting experience. How do they manage to handle countless bags for millions and millions of passengers? How do they keep passenger transfer times as short as possible? And how can they serve a growing number of flights with planes that are getting bigger all the time? No doubt that must pose immense challenges to technology and logistics. Dubai International is the most important hub between Europe and Asia, and also a gateway to the Middle East and Africa. With more than 57 million passengers, 80 million bags, and almost 2.5 million tons of cargo per year. That makes Dubai International one of the busiest airports worldwide.
We are a world-class company, and we are looking for world-class partners to make sure that we are equipped with the right tools and support as we continue this journey to success and excellence. I am very happy with the support I get from Siemens. They are always there when we need them at management level and even at operational level. They have always made us feel like they are partners, not only service suppliers.
For Dubai International, Siemens provided state-of-the-art solutions that were perfectly adapted to its specific needs. With more than 90 kilometers of conveyor lines, the airport's baggage handling system is one of the largest worldwide. Racetrack conveyor lines achieve a maximum speed of 7.5 meters per second and can handle up to 15,000 bags per hour, reducing transfer times to a minimum. Dubai International recently opened Concourse A, the world's first purpose-built A380 facility. 20 gates are equipped to receive the world's largest passenger plane, with corresponding baggage handling system capacities. Siemens developed and installed the new innovative baggage warehouse, which automatically stores and distributes transfer baggage and allows individual retrieval on request. It has 6,500 storage locations and retains the baggage until the respective flight is ready to be processed. The Siemens baggage warehouse makes it possible to transfer many types of baggage completely automatically, just as in a distribution center.
We were talking very closely with the airport here to develop a new idea how we could manage things like flexibility, size, the dynamic behavior, and also things like energy efficiency and footprint and scalability for the future. So all of that was combined into a new approach, and the idea of a warehouse was actually born jointly together with our client here.
The baggage warehouse is driven via a warehouse management system. This intelligent IT system knows the position of every tray in the rack, and it can feed the baggage, separated according to destination, back into the baggage handling system at the right time. The Siemens baggage warehouse has clear benefits for the customer. Due to its modular concept, it is flexible in size, it's scalable, responds dynamically to peak times, and is energy efficient.
I have seen excellent support from Siemens in terms of O&M management and control, in terms of safety management and control. They have always been there for us. The service and support is unconditional.
For Dubai International, as a true single-source supplier, Siemens creates integrated solutions for design, technology, and services, with high cost efficiency over the entire life cycle.
Siemens is riding really at the edge of technology, try to advance their business and help their business customers, and associates. I think the value on the table that Siemens brings is far more than the others, It is the reliability, and it is technical know-how, and it is really to a big extent friendship also.
Our expertise in project management is a key factor for success as it ensures reliable and excellent project execution at all times. Our performance is geared to establish long-term partnerships, which is the key factor in a rapid but sustainable development of airports, as well as for our own organization.
Dubai International has ambitious goals, but there are even bigger things to come.
There is a plan to optimize the capacity of Dubai International Airport, and there is a plan also to take the overflow to this airport, and the biggest plan is to build the biggest airport in Dubai World Central, which will be a 160 million passenger airport, and we would like Siemens to help us.
We have been partners for almost 10 years now, and we definitely don't want to throw that experience and try something new. We want to use it and build on it together with Siemens.
Dubai International is ready for takeoff.
The Americans and the British failed, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates, succeeded. What do you think was the difference?
They called the Germans.
Yes? And did the Germans come cheap? So do you think the budget and schedule were the priorities, or the scope and quality was the priority? Scope and quality, because it was strategic to make Dubai strategically a huge hub, which Dubai doesn't have much oil, but has leveraged its position in the world to be that hub. It'll probably get challenged by long-range aircraft that don't need to be refueled. We'll see. We'll see whether that happens or not. So it doesn't mean that it's a very large project, a mega project. Does it really need to fail? Such, we hosted the 2000 Olympics, and I think that was really quite a large success, and not the exorbitant cost of, say, the Beijing Olympics. So it's not necessary, and the American Salt Lake City Olympics was lauded as being very successful too. successful organisation through to not bankrupting the host state, Utah, in this case with Salt Lake City Winter Olympics. So they don't have to fail, but it takes a special quality of management to make them successful. So Larson talks about reference class forecasting, finding similar projects and using analogy. I'll talk about the Delphi method in a moment. So Thompson says that there's huge errors in scope, in stakeholder effort, quality, risk, task, and people, and again uses this funnel. That when we nail down what the scope should be, is going to be when we get stakeholder approval, we understand the quality and the risk and the task and the people, we then get a much more filtered estimate with accuracy. So one method, a consensus method, is the Delphi method, where we brief a series of experts, at least 3, on what the project is, and they all go off and independently do their estimates, and then each person presents their estimate, and then they influence each other, such as the outliers tend to moderate their estimate, and we get a consensus amongst the experts. So this can be quite, so we discard the outliers, and we often can get quite an accurate estimate, a top-down, independent. The Americans from the Polaris nuclear submarine program in the 1950s invented the PERT method, which is a program evaluation review technique, and we take the optimistic and 4 times the realistic plus the pessimistic and divide by 6. So we think of the estimate as a range and 5 to the middle. But Thompson talks about politics. Jake will like this, that there are a lot of games that are played, basic games, and then there are advanced games. I won't examine all this, it's just a bit of fun. Thompson. Double it and add some. That makes a lot of sense, because your boss is going to halve whatever estimate you give, so that's why you double it and add some. So you still have a bucket even after it's halved. The price is right. This is a technique that's used. The boss asks for an estimate and keeps rejecting it until the boss gets the estimate that they want, and then you are then committed. That becomes your commitment to that estimate because you've made the estimate. The X plus, Mr. Big Shots determine something. We have only 4 weeks to complete when no deadline has been imposed whatsoever. It's just you've been lied to. This one, the Spanish Inquisition, is similar to The Price is Right. Was where you're ambushed. A meeting is held, looks innocuous, looks like it's nothing is harmless, but in fact you're asked to give an off-the-cuff estimate, and then that becomes again your commitment here. The advanced games is simply low bidding it. What are they prepared to pay here? And then you extend and enhance it with additional features once you've got the client committed to your low-ball offer here. Then this ends up gotcha, or like playing the pokies, is you've invested good money, and the problem is that you don't want to write off your initial investment, so you continue, like the poker machine that you expect is going to pay off, is you continuously invest more and more and more into the project. Smoke and mirrors, blinding with science, the Beam's constructive cost model or function point. It's nonsense. It was based on random data, and you may not even realize you're playing a game. Thompson's view of these estimation techniques. And we use often false precision as an example too. Is really inaccurate. So how do you cope? Let's play. Oh, I know that game. That's a fun game. But when you're ready, we can do some serious estimating. Putting it back to the boss. The boss, what do you think? And blaming your brain, and then it's just saying, you know, you can't possibly commit until you do further research. Let me bring my state-of-the-art estimation tool, roll 3 dice. The meltdown, yeah, that's an idea too, or just say no. It's up to you to stop playing these games, try and bring some honesty and integrity into the project estimation process. And the more experienced project managers know this, and they know how to handle it, and they know not to agree. But this is a novice's trap. So, interesting discussion of estimation. Essential to projects are the sponsors. Sponsors are the most important stakeholders, so it shouldn't take us too long. Let's talk about Larson chapter 10 and some Tomset on stakeholders. So stakeholders are the people affected by your project. And the sponsor is the most important stakeholder because the sponsor is the one who's organised the funds, it's the client for your project. So lots of maxims. You can't do it all and get it all done. So project managers where context is more important than content is you have to work through a web of relationships that don't work hands-on. You've got good people in your team, give them autonomy. That it's not what you think is the priority, it's the stakeholders who give you the priority of the project. So there is a network here of stakeholders, your project team around you, over whom you've got direct control, but you have this network around of keeping stakeholders satisfied. So, for example, for a financial software project, we can see that it affects all departments within the organisation, and they all have to get buy-in and contribute to the project. So, you can read this yourself. Here the type of project stakeholders, the project team, other project managers, admin support, functional managers, etc. So you have to triage these stakeholders like a nurse in an emergency department and work out who are the most important stakeholders. Classify them. So you have to be able to communicate, not like that. But the critical stakeholders require two-way communication. They have to give you active approval. The essential ones, they need to be informed, especially if changes. Again, it's two-way. But the non-essential is just give them information. And if they've got a question, like you are non-essential. If you've got a question, I expect you to do your assignment. If you've got a question, which I end up asking, it's really one way. I told you this is the assignment. Don't need your approval as to what the question should be in the assignment. If you've got a problem, put it on the forum or ask me. It's one way. Possibly a partnership agreement is the answer with stakeholders, even an agreement with your sponsor. If the project is not viable, that you allocated to a different project, or that your sponsor will be available to you to review the project. So, partnership agreement, what service will be provided by your contractors, at what time, at what cost, what's the contingency, and who's responsible for the relationship. This is a very good way of handling a lot of your stakeholders. So another definition of stakeholders, they're the people with large stakes. They're usually 2 meters long and sharp at both ends, and they're ready to inflict pain with their stakes. Put them through your chest. So you need to use your sources of power. So you have an organizational source of power. You're the project manager. So you've been hired, you've been given a budget here, and so somebody has thought of this in your organization as that the project is important. That you have some expertise, that you understand the business case and can argue the business case, argue the validity of the technology, and the importance of the project. And hopefully you've got some reputation too, that you're leading the project, and other projects you've led have been successful. And this then is good news for the current project because of your reputation. Precedent that projects of this nature have delivered substantially for the organisation. Referent, typically your sponsor. Take it up with my sponsor if you disagree with this project. Reciprocity, help me with this and I will help you with your project. Or information, just explaining the benefits that are to be delivered of this project. So very contextual issues in dealing with the stakeholders. And this is very, very true. They are your best friends or your worst enemies. You decide. It depends on you whether they support you or not. And that's your ability to communicate. Get your stakeholders. Showing what benefit you deliver to them. And this project helps them do their work more easily, more profitably, delivering better client service, helping meet their KPIs. That's the language you have to talk. So your sponsor is the one who shields you from the bad weather. So sponsors, the effectiveness of the project sponsor is the single best indicator of project success or failure, absolutely. We saw this with the Opera House that Hudson resigned, he had enough with the successive state premiers, but originally Cargill who instigated the project, and it was Cargill's vision in support of Hudson with this very novel idea. So it's the sponsor who will ensure your success or failure, because it's the sponsor who has the resources. So Thompson gives us 9 rules. But that the sponsor, you need a sponsor who has a big bag of money, a contingency for your project, and a baseball bat to be able to beat on the head those stakeholders who are trying to block your project, impediments to your project. So you need a powerful sponsor. That's why the sponsor is the most important indicator of success or failure. The sponsor who is powerful will ensure you get the resources, the schedule that you need. The sponsor who is weak will simply collapse under the pressure and you'll be buried. The passive conduit. It's not your project. It's owned by the stakeholders. You are the passive conduit through which the dreams of the sponsor flows. Don't make decisions yourself. Educate the sponsor, meet the needs of the stakeholders, don't do what you think. It's not your project. You are only the passive conduit. Just like any other stakeholder, you decide. You get the sponsor you deserve. If you are honest with your sponsor, educate your sponsor, if you talk legitimately, you will get sponsor support. Otherwise, the sponsor will undermine you if the sponsor doesn't trust you. In the absence of information, the executives make decisions. So if you are weak at communication, if you're dishonest with communication, if you try and hide flaws and faults, things that are going wrong, they will assume the worst and take action to cancel your project. Again, you get the sponsor you deserve. Be honest. They don't read complex reports. If things are going wrong, the level of support you get is inversely proportional to the amount of time you've taken to deliver the bad news. The sooner you deliver the bad news, the more support you're going to get. You have to educate as well. Sponsors may not be used to project work, may not be used to this new technology, to the complexity. You have to bring them along the journey. The level of help you get is, there we are, is inversely proportional to your delay in asking. Show them the money. That's the Tidwell reference. Show them the money. Don't communicate technically. It's the wrong language. Show them what the cost is for every day of delay in the project. This is from Star Trek 1, the Beam Me Up, Scotty. They're still beaming up, don't worry, even in Star Trek Discovery at the moment. But that was from the original Star Trek. In the latest episode of Discovery, they put in a clip from the original Star Trek. If you have a look, and the continuity doesn't work quite well, but that's a little off topic. But beam me up, meaning that there should be a fallback, that if you do cancel the project, you still have a role in the organisation. Because the right decision might be that the project's not viable. And essentially, you know, the plane that's crashed before it takes off is, if you don't do the pre-flight check, then you shouldn't take off. If you haven't got a sponsor, the project shouldn't start. It's almost doomed for failure. Oh dear, I'm 6 minutes early. Let you have that. See you next week.